The Honorable Robert Mbui. Nobody's on the floor, the Honorable TJ, so nothing is out of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that this issue of who is majority and who is minority has caused a lot of confusion. In fact, the media, our voters are confused to the point where some think that the same way we voted for the Speaker here is the same way we might end up having to vote for the leader of majority. But, Mr. Speaker, this issue is not opaque. This is in black and white. Because, Mr. Speaker, I've heard members here talk about some issues, and I think I would like to say that what we are facing as a problem now is a situation, and because members have talked about marriage, is a situation where your newlywed wife, after she settles in your home, notices that your neighbor has a brand new car. And then she starts now talking about an abusive marriage. But nothing has gone wrong. And Mr. Speaker, any relationship with a neighbor with a brand new car or a house on the top of the hill is actually a cohabiting relationship. It is not a properly procured marriage. So, Mr. Speaker, who has a properly procured marriage? Those of us, Mr. Speaker, that signed an agreement before the time of the election. Mr. Speaker, this Constitution Article 108 is very clear about the leader of the majority party, and it says on Part 2 that it is the leader of the largest party or coalition of parties. And Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that the size of a party is based on the number of elected members. Mr. Speaker, if you go back to the last election, there was 4 teams that were competing for elective office. Let's forget the Wajakoa and the other one. We are left with 2 teams, and that was Raila Amolo Odinga and William Samoei Ruto. Each of them had a coalition, which was known by everybody in the country, including even nursery school children. Mr. Speaker, the results of this election were announced, and it clearly showed that those that were elected under the Azimio la Umoja were more than those that were elected under the Kenya Kwanza. Mr. Speaker, it is only after the election that things started changing, and only after the announcement of Honorable William Ruto, His Excellency, as the president, that things started changing. If the results were different, I can tell you, we would not even be having this discussion. So let us be honest with ourselves and agree, Mr. Speaker, that the fact is this. You know, and I've heard that, I've heard people complain, but let me just tell you, the fact is that to determine the majority is by a letter that was read and tabled on the floor today. So what further argument do we have about deciding who is the majority? Now, in another month, Mr. Speaker, I do agree that Azimio la Umoja will not be majority. But as we speak today, Mr. Speaker, I think you have under no obligation to make that decision because the decision is already made for you. The Constitution has made that decision. The Standing Orders 2B has made that decision. So, Mr. Speaker, your work is easy for you. I've heard this issue of the Political Parties Act being lambasted by members of this House. I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that we as members of the House are the ones that passed this law, and now we are insulting it. Mr. Speaker, there is no duress because members of Parliament did take a vote, and there are those that voted for it, and there are those that voted against it. Mr. Speaker, as you sit on your chair, please note, and this is a fact, that, Mr. Speaker, members make a decision through a vote. So if the vote is taken and this becomes a law, it becomes a law for the land. And His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta actually assented to it. So when we start saying it is an amorphous law, it is a bad law, it is a law that was under coercion, Mr. Speaker, I think it is unfortunate because as a House, we made a decision, we made our bed, we lie on it. But Mr. Speaker, there is nothing wrong with the Political Parties Act. It's only curing political indiscipline, where people want to belong to one party and another at the same time, where people are elected in one coalition and the next day they troop in their numbers to go and get coerced, Mr. Speaker, so that they can defect for the parties that elected them. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament must remain true to the people that elected them into the House, and those who are elected under Azimio must stick with Azimio. Mr. Speaker, there are people from our region who are elected And we went as Wiper to support them because they were in Azimio. Now, immediately after the election, they jump and go to Kenya Kwanza. But they have not gone to tell the people why they defected. Mr. Speaker, I think it is a simple decision. Azimio la Umoja is a majority party, and I am the deputy.
Thank you, Honorable. The Honorable, we have really many members. The Honorable Member Chepkonga.